What's up, folks? Got another tackle tip video for you here. This time we're going to talk about specifically the month of May, which is what I think of here in the South. Really, this is any time that you're around that kind of spawn, moving towards post-spawn phase. You've got a lot of fry garters out there. Here's 3 baits you're going to be able to use during that time frame to catch bass on any lake around the country, especially when you're talking about here in the South. So without any further ado, let's get to the 3 different baits. I'm not going to go in any certain order here, so don't think that one versus the other is going to be better. Really, you can use these 3 baits on any day, any lake, any time. It's really going to be dependent on obviously the lake and the day and the time on which one works the best, but these are going to be 3 that you can use. So one thing we all know is that spawning fish, and especially fish that have babies already, they have fry their garden, they hate frogs. They hate frogs, and they also hate bluegill as well. And a hollow body frog, especially one that's got kind of a bluegill pattern, really mimics both very well. The bass is not really particularly thinking about whether it's a frog or a bluegill or a herring or anything else for that matter. If they see something coming towards their bait, they're going to be aggressive towards it. And so this really gives you a profile that's like a frog or like a bluegill. They can come up, they can swallow it down, protecting their babies, and it's a way for you to catch some really big fish. Not always males are the ones guarding the fry. Sometimes the females are still hanging around, and the females are also hungry, so they're going to be apt to hit that frog. Not all frogs are created equal. Sometimes you're going to need to go down to a little smaller frog. Pay attention to what's on the bank. If you see a lot of little small frogs kicking around, you're not hearing any of the big bullfrogs croaking, you're not seeing them, go to a smaller frog if you're not getting bit. And sometimes you want something that's a moving style. This is going to imitate a lot like a buzzbait, but you can throw this over grass. I wouldn't say heavy grass because you're going to get it hung up. Pro tip on this prop frogs, you can actually take this kicker hook off there and it becomes even more weedless, but the reality is these little feet are going to get caught up if the grass is too surface. So subsurface grass or sparse grass, throwing over pond weed, stuff like that, this is going to work really well for you. Grass edges, you're going to get some really big bites with this. I've caught some of my biggest fish on this prop frog specifically, but frogs in general, some of my biggest fish ever. So that's bait number 1. Now bait number 2, this is starting to become more shed to light in recent years. This is one that's been kind of a sleeper bait for a lot of people that bass fish. One that I really found by accident fishing ponds, and I honestly thought it was because I was fishing ponds that I was getting the bites, and it translates really well to lakes. But that's a floating worm, or I think of a Zoom trick worm. Merthiolate is going to be the color I want to use the most. This thing right here, it just glows in the water. It stands out in all water clarities, whether it's muddy or whether it's clear, it's going to stand out, and they bite it in all water clarities. Sometimes the pink is a little better deal. I don't really go with the pink nearly as much, but both work really well. If you're going to ask me, I'm going with the merthiolate over the pink. But this is going to work really well in that post-spawn, spawn phase. Again, those fish are aggressive, they're guarding. These colors really trigger a lot of bites. You're going to throw this thing out. You're going to give it a twitch as soon as you see it sink out of sight. Same thing over and over again. You can play with it. Sometimes you can let it sink a little longer and, give it a jerk after it's paused a little longer. Really play with it. Don't think that there's one size fits all with any of these lures or retrieves or colors or any of that stuff. It's all for you to play with, and the day and the weather conditions and the fish attitude, multitude of other things are going to come into play anytime you're fishing. But that said, those 2 particular colors and any kind of twitch cadence from my experience has worked really well. The hooks you're going to typically use, something like this wide gap EWG hook, a little more finesse and thin wire. That works really well and it makes it float down a little slower. I personally have been going more to the screw lock hooks lately. It stays on there a lot better for one. You're going to get a lot more fish out of each bait. You're going to be able to fish a lot more efficiently because you're not going to be constantly having to reskin hook that thing. But that should give you some ideas as far as the floating worm on how to fish that. If any questions about any of this stuff, put it in the comments. I'm happy to answer. Now let's go with the 3rd bait type. Now, bladed jig, chatterbait, whatever you want to call it, for me, it's always going to be a jackhammer. Jackhammer is one of those baits that really any time of year it's going to get bit really well, but this time of year it just seems to be a really special time to throw a chatterbait. You're going to catch fish of all sizes, but you're going to catch a lot of really big fish because they're hungry, and the ones that are hungry are going to eat this thing purely out of being hungry, but you're also going to have a lot of just purely aggressive fish. You pull something with a big profile, a lot of thump next to some fry, a fish that's guarding some fry, they're going to gobble it up. Especially when you use something like this Brett's bluegill that is mimicking a bluegill. Go figure. Gold blade's going to be really good on your overcast days or your muddy waters. Sometimes you're going to have more of a sunny day, which is when I'm going to go with something that's a little bit more opaque as far as the blade style goes. I do like that red and orange combo really a lot of times a year, but especially this time of year, the red tends to trigger a little more aggression out of these fish. The orange belly, a lot of your bluegill and sunfish are going to have that real orange belly to them, so I feel like it mimics that. It also mimics carp too, which a lot of people don't think about bass eating carp, but bass absolutely love eating baby carp. My buddy John Shin on Big Bass Blessings will tell you all about that. He's caught some massive one on carp swim baits. But that's another good color there. We cannot forget the shad colors. Sometimes you're going to be having a shad spawn go on, and that shad color is really going to be your big deal. It's going to get you all your bites. But I would urge you to, again, be creative. Use what you think works well. I'll throw one other color at you. This bruised green pumpkin, which is green pumpkin and black and blue combination. Sometimes I'll put a green pumpkin trailer on there like I have there. It's the Zacho always for me on the jackhammer. Well, I'll say it's like 90% of the time always. The other time I'm going to put a Z-Crawl Jr. on there, and that's because of me. I'm going to be fishing around a lot of cover that I can get hung up, like wood, for instance. That Z-Crawl flat belly lets you pull that bait over. That's the logic there. But anyways, back to, colors. You're going to use green pumpkin or black and blue on this particular color. Kind of covers both of your schemes. And that'll give you a couple of different colors for you to try out. But any of those three baits, whether it's the frogs, whether it's the floating worms, or whether we're talking about bladed jigs, chatterbaits, don't be sacrilegious, chatterbaits, that's what it's going to get you a lot of your bites here in May. Now, keep in mind, the fish are hungry this time of year, so really you can use a lot of different type of baits, and I urge you to definitely be creative. But if you're just trying to get started or you want 3 go-to baits, you don't want to think about it, whatever your situation is, these 3 I know for a fact are going to catch you a lot of bass. They're going to catch you some of your biggest bass and win you some tournaments if you're trying to do like I'm trying to do this weekend on Lake Fork. So guys, really appreciate y'all support. Really appreciate y'all watching the videos as always. If you'd put a thumbs up, comments help. Comments also if you have questions, of course. And if you would subscribe to the channel, you're going to see more of these videos like this, as well as some of my fishing adventures, some of my hunting adventures, and all of that really helps support me, and it's totally free of charge to you guys. So I'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for more, guys.